Hello, everyone.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are y'all?
Hello.
I'm going to give folks about 1 more minute because it's a good problem to have, but having trouble keeping up with letting people in a little bit at a time. So we'll start in about 1 more minute. In the meantime, I'm going to put a fun prompt for us in the chat. If you don't want to participate in the fun question, just at the very least, give us your name and your organization. I am going to record this meeting just for folks that aren't able to hop on today. And we have some really great presentations from our partners. And I just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to view those. And we will send out that recording as well. Okay, while I'm letting a few other people in, I just put a prompt for us in the chat. If you'll just drop in there your name, the organization that you're representing, and if you have a New Year's resolution that you have been sticking with and are proud of, go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. Now that I asked you to do that, I guess I should have been thinking about what mine is. Okay, same, David. Mine has been close to that. Mine was just to at least do some type of movement and hopefully get at least a mile in a day. So whether that's walking the dogs or going for a run or something like that, just trying to get at least a mile in. I will say I've missed a couple of days, but I've been making some progress. Kim, you didn't want to disappoint yourself. I like that. That's very real.
Just being honest. It's session.
I love it.
It's session this year. Like, come on.
I know. I know. In the chat, thank y'all so much for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm really excited to have everyone here for our first full collaborative meeting of 2023. We have I say a packed schedule, but I think we're still going to end a little bit early. But we have some really great presentations from our partners, including Caitlin from Children at Risk. David from Texas Care is going to talk to us about the recently released school readiness dashboard. Very excited to hear more about that. And Megan is going to be giving us a little bit of an update on our Texas preschool development grant opportunity. We will go around and just do some quick legislative updates. I'm sure you are all aware that legislative session started last Tuesday. I want to say that, initially when I was making this agenda, I was like, things are really slow, we probably won't have that many updates. And then I don't know, I jinxed all of us apparently. As you know, in the last hour and a half or so, the budgets have been released for both the House and Senate side. So, things are ramping up fairly quickly, which is fun for all of us on this call. But hopefully, we'll have at least some insights that we can share and updates for this upcoming legislative session. And then I will give just a really brief federal update on some exciting things that passed at the end of 2022, again at the federal level, that I think are going to be good for children and families in Texas. But first, I'm going to pass it off to Caitlin from Children at Risk, and she is going to walk us through some exciting updates with our funder for the collaborative, the Pritzker Children's Initiative. We will be continuing to work with them, over the next few months as we wrap up this current grant that has made this collaborative possible, but have some exciting updates for the future. And Caitlin will be walking us through kind of what the next few months slash years are going to look like with the collaborative. So with that, I will hand it off to Caitlin. Caitlin, fair warning, Zoom doesn't like us today. So it's not going to let me make you co-host. I'm going to have to make you the host.
I will do my best.
So you know what? Don't worry about if you're able to let people in the waiting room, that's cool. It has very much slowed down, so I think you should be okay.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, thank you, everyone. And in just a minute, I will share just a few slides. Like Brittany said, I'm here to give a little bit of information about the year-long strategic planning process, which we have received funds from the Pritzker Children's Initiative to embark on. We're very excited about the opportunity to, chart a long-term path forward in partnership with all the partners on the call and our partners across the state for what we can do to really advance prenatal to 3 outcomes. So give me 1 second to get everything up and running on my screen. All right. Can someone give me a thumbs up? Okay, excellent.
Good.
So like I said, PCI has provided funding for a year-long strategic planning process to advance prenatal to 3 outcomes across Texas. There is a grant funding opportunity available at kind of the end of the cycle, and we'll talk about that more later as we get farther into the process and honestly as we get a little more information from the Pritzker Children's Initiative. But I really think that the real opportunity to emphasize here is that we have some time and space and funding to really dream a little bit about what we want to be true, talk with community members, coalition stakeholders about what they see as the problems of practice and the real opportunities for movement, and create a long-term path forward, a roadmap that's, potentially we can take to other funders as well, or find other ways to turn into reality. Sorry, I was letting a couple more people in. So,
thank you.
I got you. All right, so just to give a little bit of information about the objectives of the strategic planning grant as laid out. We have an opportunity to be really bold, to really think about what are those really high impact changes we can make for pregnant people, infants, young children, and their families. And ideally, and this is a little bit of a tension, but I want us to kind of begin wrestling with this together. We want to identify outcomes that are universal, things that we know that all pregnant people need, all young children need, and that we want to be true in our state, in our society, in all our communities across the state. However, we know that even when we pass a brilliant universal solution, those policies don't impact all counties, all communities, all people in the same way. There are different barriers and different facilitators that different groups are going to experience. So as we're setting those universal aims, we really want to think about who is currently not benefiting from those programs, who will not benefit from the policies, even a better policy that we're able to enact, and what are the targeted strategies that will help connect those communities who have been historically marginalized or underinvested in to those programs, policies, resources that will really benefit pregnant people and their families. All right, so I'm going to walk through a very brief example, and I don't want this to anchor anyone. There's going to be lots of opportunities. This will be a very cyclical process, but just so you kind of can start with the end in mind of what we're aiming towards. One example of a universal outcome could be that across Texas, we want food security for pregnant people and their families age 0 to 3. We want to really hold ourselves accountable to that. However, when we think about demographic groups, there might be specific counties where we know new parents are not taking up, are experiencing high levels of food insecurity. There might be parents who are reporting that they're food insecure. They don't have enough food for their families consistently month over month, but for various reasons, they don't currently qualify for SNAP. And maybe we also talk to groups who are saying we're having a big problem making sure that refugees and asylees are food secure, that families and children have the food that they need in order to thrive. And then from there, from talking to those groups directly, from talking to community stakeholders, from there we can start to think about what would be those targeted strategies that would help address that disproportionality and those disparities. So that could be partnering with a local hospital to better implement SNAP in a specific county or in a specific community. It could be updating the policies around who qualifies and for how long for SNAP, like that's a big legislative fix. And it could also be working with a specific organization around how often they reach out to enroll families in SNAP and what those processes look like, how culturally responsive they are, all of those sorts of things. And of course, we're always going to need some sort of data strategy to know that the change we are making is in fact an improvement and not just a change. We want to know that we are spending our efforts in a way that is positively impacting and positively affecting our partners, the people who we hope are benefiting from the process. So a very high level process overview. It's really broken up into 3 main phases. The first phase really being listening and learning from others, going out to communities, meeting with coalition members, meeting with policymakers and state agency leaders. I think we have a real opportunity to align with the preschool development grant process that's going on this year as well. So how are we making sure that we're really generating momentum and working, hand in glove with all our partners where possible, and reviewing data both at the state and national level to identify which communities in Texas have been historically marginalized, underrepresented, and underinvested in, who's not benefiting from the system as it currently stands, and start talking with them about what resources do they want and need, what programs do they want to prioritize. From there, the work group and the rest of the coalition will move into thinking about how do we prioritize what we've heard, how do we synthesize it, how do we analyze it, how do we make sense of it and craft a unified strategic plan going forward. And then phase 3, towards the end of the year, we really want to make sure that we take the time to take that list of recommendations, that plan, back out to the partners that we've talked with before, through surveys, through figuring out a way to get that feedback back to make sure that we're interpreting what we heard correctly, there's not something we've missed, really taking that final step to close the loop and validate what we've learned. So I know this was fast, I know we've got a lot to cover, but just to leave you with a couple next steps. If you have any questions, feedback, or just want more information about how to get involved in this planning process, please feel free to reach out to me. At the end of this, I'll put my email in the chat. Would love to connect, would love all your thoughts and expertise. And of course, stay tuned for more updates throughout the year. I and the rest of the team will be coming back to this group recurrently as experts, as people whose experience and expertise we really need to help influence this process. So you have not seen the last of me, but I appreciate your time today. And with that, I will stop share.
Well, we are so excited to have Caitlin leading on this planning process, and just excited also to see, kind of what comes out of this planning process and what the next few months will look like for the collaborative and our work with Pritzker as a whole. Before we shift gears, does anybody have any questions for Caitlin? Like she said, I know it's a lot to digest, so she had her contact info there, and I can share it out again in a follow-up email if anybody has any specific questions. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I had one. Thank you very much for that. Is there room in that process for studying how best to influence legislators at the Texas, at the Capitol, and it would include such things as, making sure we're fully resourced to get the business community involved, fully resourced to influence rural areas, things like that, but it's sort of a step back on an influence plan.
I think that how we go about achieving these, I think we will want to think about what that influence plan looks like. So I would imagine that will definitely be part of the conversation. And just to let everyone know, I know that we have all the subcommittees. We will be doing some of these brainstorming activities and strategic planning processes with all of these, with the business subcommittee, the racial equity subcommittee. We'll be kind of going around because we want to hear from the full collaborative in kind of a smaller group setting so that we have time to get all of those great ideas.
Great question. Thanks, Tom. Anybody else? Lynn?
Hi, thank you. I was just curious, speaking of the smaller groups and making the leap from last year into this upcoming year, what kinds of follow-ups do you anticipate will happen from the work that was done within those smaller work groups, specifically that are tied to the upcoming legislative session?
Do you mean work, just so I make sure I understand your question, work that was done in the subcommittees as part of
I do
PN-3?
mean work that was done in the subcommittees.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think I can say definitely for, we're ongoing with our subcommittee work. We more specifically are continuing to work with our parent advisory committee, which was part of our parent engagement work. And some of our parents are on the call right now, our parent representatives. So always excited about that. And we are continuing also with our business advisory committee work that Tom and Sandy, who I think are both on the call, continue to work on that and are working on building a really strong business leader coalition to help influence at the Capitol this legislative session. And then we also have our racial equity subcommittee work that is ongoing, that we're hopeful to use to really craft some specific policy asks around equity and addressing disproportionality this legislative session. Is there a specific subcommittee though that you would like me to talk about in a little bit more depth?
I was curious about the workforce group and how that might have last year's work might influence the upcoming focus area.
Okay.
Do you want me to take that one, Brittany?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a Kim question.
Hi, Lynn. So yeah, I think that all that, this work is also overlapping with legislative sessions. So it's also like, what traction do we get? What things can we get passed? What lessons can we learn? So as we are going through session, as we continue to have those conversations, I think that will all meld together as far as where our next steps go and really where is that vision for us. And what do we want to do? So yeah, I think all that stuff will continue to be carried over and built upon, not start from scratch, but really like, okay, this is where we were and this is where we want to get to next.
Thanks, Kim. Anybody else? If not, then we will switch gears a bit. Caitlin put her email in the chat. So if you have any other specific questions that come to mind and you want to shoot her an email, it is there. And like she said, definitely we'll be giving more updates as we kind of go along this year in this planning process, definitely in our full collaborative meetings, but also in our different subcommittees if you are a part of those. And I'm sure you can find more information in our monthly PN-3 newsletters, kind of about where we are in this process. But now I am going to hand it off to David Fagan from Texans Care for Children, and he is going to give us an update on the school readiness dashboard. And I'm going to make you the host right now, so don't forget.
Okay, thanks, Brittany. I will hope that nobody goes to the waiting room, but I'll do my best to admit them and multitask as well as Caitlin did.
Caitlin did set the bar pretty high, but you're going to do great.
No, I should have never let me go after her. Okay, so give me a moment while I share screen here. Okay, I'm going to ask for the same thumbs up. Okay, well, thank you, Kim, for giving me that thumbs up. So for those who don't know me, yes, my name is David Fagan from Texans Care for Children. I'm our Director of Early Learning Policy. I work very closely with so many of you all the time. I'm also joined by a couple of my Texans Care colleagues here today, Alec Mendoza and Maddox Hilgers. And for Texans Care, this school readiness dashboard has been a big focus for the past couple of years. And I'm excited to tell you all a little bit about where it is now, kind of what we're planning and how y'all can all kind of continue to be part of this, like so many of you have been for the past couple of years. So first of all, I want to set this vision that this dashboard had. And it's that we have a Texas in which all children arrive on the first day of kindergarten ready to succeed and thrive for years to come. And we know that for that vision to be realized, we have a lot of work to do to track our progress and set big goals. So if Brittany had only given me 30 seconds for this presentation, I would have just shown this slide. So if you walk away with anything, let it be this, that Texans recognize that school readiness in early childhood must be a priority. This collaborative is evidence of that, as is all the incredible work our state agencies are doing, all of the important progress our legislature has made. School readiness, early childhood, early literacy, these are things that state leaders and experts like you all have really identified as a priority. And we, I think, also agree that we need a more comprehensive view of school readiness. For a long time, when people hear the phrase school readiness, it conjures up images of, children being able to recite their ABCs or demonstrate a grade level vocabulary. But if you talk to any teacher or any parent, they will tell you that children's ability to succeed in school has a lot more to do with what environments they have at home, whether they have access to the health coverage that they need, whether they're in positive, supportive environments at home, than it does with their ABCs or their vocabulary. So a comprehensive view of school readiness is really needed for us to drive progress. Unfortunately, the dashboard data is telling us that Texas is falling short. We're falling short of the goals we set for ourselves. We're falling short when we compare ourselves to other southern states or our neighboring states, other big states. No matter how you slice it, we have a lot of work to do for that vision on the previous slide to be realized. And finally, the dashboard data and the policy recommendations can really help us set goals and measure progress, both into this legislative session and beyond. So let's talk a little bit about the need. We know that too few Texas children are arriving at school with the strong early childhood foundations they need to succeed. That manifests in things like early literacy and early mathematics, but ultimately we know that these things really show in the later years when children don't have access to the early childhood supports they need. You can see it in graduation rates, dropout rates, so many other areas across our education system where when these other systems broke down and didn't provide what children need, we pay the cost of that for years to come. And again, to improve school readiness in Texas, a multi-domain cross set of indicators can really help us measure progress and drive policy. So I could spend the whole presentation talking about how many people made this possible, including so many of you on the call. I'll mention a few groups here, but again, there's so many people, including those on this call, that helped us out. So Texans Care for Children, we benefited from research and data support from the Prenatal 3 Policy Impact Center out of the University of Vanderbilt. Many of you know Dr. Cynthia Osborne, and she was an essential resource for us, as well as her team, in compiling this data, allowing us to compare to other states like we did. So she was an essential resource. We also had a diverse brain trust throughout the process that many of you contributed to, who helped us get feedback on what the dashboard would look like, what it would include, what the data is that we should be featuring. And we also had a lot of amazing philanthropic support. In particular, the Meadows Foundation played a huge role with sort of providing the seed funding, as well as several other foundations we include here. So it was a big tent. This slide could be many slides long, and we're grateful to all of you on the call. You know who you are, who helped make this possible. Again, I don't want to spend too long on this slide, but I mentioned it's been a 2-year effort. This started before the pandemic, where we saw in 2019 a landmark legislative session for school finance and early childhood, and we saw how measures like third grade reading really drove legislative interest. And we realized that school readiness needed a more holistic definition to drive progress in the same ways. And so since then, we've been working and talking to folks like y'all and doing the research and honing our arguments and building the user interface to launch the dashboard, which we did in November of last year. So here's the real crux of what the dashboard is and what it really features. So it's 5 main categories of data. I'll walk through each of them and give a little snapshot of what you'll see there on the site. So Texas early childhood demographics is one of the areas in which we cover demographics, including things like the number of children in Texas by race and ethnicity, the number of children living in poverty, the number of annual births. These are things that really help us understand the demographic realities of our state. Who are the young children of Texas? These are not areas with policy recommendations attached to them like the other data categories. But we do think it's sort of critical that we understand our demographic realities, that we understand our diversity, that we understand how many children are living in poverty, which I'll get to in a moment a little bit more, for us to be able to really drive progress. So this is an example of one of the graphics you'll see on the site that in Texas, 1 in 10 births in the United States is a child born in Texas. So it's a reminder that the work of this collaborative and all of those who care about school readiness and early childhood has national implications, that 1 in 10 kids are those here in the Lone Star State. So the work we do really does have that importance. And, we think it's important to remind lawmakers of that as well. So sufficient household resources is the first of our buckets that really is about areas in which we'd like the environments for Texas kids to improve. Because we know that these early experiences of financial hardship, they disrupt healthy brain development. They affect long-term health and development. It affects these children's growing brains and bodies in real ways. And the dashboard provides some data and information on SNAP participation, the number of young children living in near poverty, as well as child hunger or food insecurity. I will show you an example of another graphic on the site. For those who don't know, SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's been proven by research, we have this research on the site, to be an effective tool for addressing hunger, helping low-income families purchase healthy food, reducing the number of children who skip meals. It's linked to improved birth outcomes. This is an effective program. But when you look at us compared to some of our neighboring states, this is a case where a high number is not what you want to see. This is eligible children not receiving the benefits of the SNAP program, the program that, again, is promoting healthy physical development, helping with school readiness. We're not enrolling these children who are eligible, as well as our other states. We have some policy recommendations around that on the site, but this is one of those areas where we just need to clean up the services that we're providing and ensure that eligible families know what they are eligible for and have the ease and ability to actually access those services. So positive adult-child interactions, this is an area where many people on this call have done some incredible work, because as everyone knows, positive interactions with caregivers is critical. Children's parents or other caregivers are really their first and most important influencer on school readiness. So, as a child's learning their language and motor skills, learning to walk, eating foods, their interactions with their parents or their other caregivers is really going to be one of the main influencers of their ability to be school ready. So the dashboard has information on some of the things that we can track and measure on positive adult-child interactions, including home visiting, child maltreatment, as well as access to daily reading, which we know is very important for school readiness. So again, we know that adults in a child's life have a great influence and responsibility to nurture their child's healthy growth and development. And we know that when things break down, maltreatment often occurs, abuse and neglect in the home. We know that maltreatment can be driven by a number of factors. It can be untreated substance use by their caregiver. It may be family domestic violence that's gone unresolved, unaddressed mental health challenges. Each of these are things that the state can actually do a lot to impact. So as you'll see here, this is a different example of a graphic where Texas compares to the US average. We're meaningfully higher than the US average in maltreatment. So it's a reminder of why we need to invest in families and really trying to prevent some of the trauma that's taking place, because a child who's experiencing abuse and neglect, even our best teachers are not going to be able to maximize that child's school readiness potential. So moving along, good health and development. Obviously, again, great leadership on this call on this topic. We know that research shows that children born healthy and that have access to reliable, timely health services are more likely to be school ready. If a child doesn't have access to the services to get the eyeglasses they need or to address a developmental delay that has manifested, that's going to impact their school readiness and their third grade reading and all of their academic trajectory. So this is the area that actually has the most data points, because healthcare has a lot of elements to it, because it's about healthy births, healthy babies, and healthy moms, just like this collaborative has really endorsed. So, here are some of the different areas in which we cover: preterm births, access to Medicaid, women's health coverage, well, child visits. We're really covering the gamut of what good health and development means in these early childhood years. I will show you an example of another one of our graphics here: access to Medicaid. We know that health insurance is proven to really help ensure that children can get regular checkups, that disabilities or developmental delays are identified, that mental health issues are addressed. And again, we know that this is an area where a high number is not what you want to see, that we have a significantly higher percentage of Medicaid eligible children who are uninsured. This is a similar story to the SNAP issue, right? These are services that children are eligible for that they are not accessing. And so that goes to our state's ability to enroll kids and families in the services they're eligible for, and break down some of those barriers. My colleague Alec on the call has told stories about how difficult it is for even resetting passwords and things like that in order to access, and renew services and coverage. So there's a lot we can do to make this process less onerous. Finally, enriching early learning experiences. This is the area where I think people most typically think of when they think of school readiness, of having access to high quality childcare, effective high quality pre-K, as well as programs in Head Start. So we know that having access to quality teachers and load ratios and all the things that we know are important in high quality childcare and early childhood education really help kids start off on the right track when they enter kindergarten. Another example of one of our graphics, courtesy of our friends at Children at Risk. This is from their desert maps, which I know many of you are familiar with. And here you can see that more than 5 in 10, over half, of low-income Texas kids under age 6 with working parents live in an area that's a childcare desert, a subsidized childcare desert. So there's inadequate access based on the demand. So unless we make the big investments this session, we're going to continue to see that worsen. And our policy recommendations really include some ways that we can address that. So we have a lot of challenges. One of the things that we confronted with this dashboard was we don't want people to walk away thinking these are wicked problems, unsolvable problems, that we're too far in the hole to really make an impact. And so one of the things that I think differentiates this dashboard from a lot of data dashboards you see is we have over 50 policy recommendations attached to it. So any moment that you see, well, we can't solve these issues, this is beyond the scope of what the state legislature can do, we have the policy recommendations that are highly vetted, that many of you contributed to, that are based on the research that's out there around how we can change each of those data points in a positive direction. So many of those are one-to-one aligned with the prenatal 3 agenda. So if you look on the childcare, enriching early learning experiences recommendations, you'll see a lot of the language that you've seen before, just same thing on good health and development and on some of the home visiting supports. There are also some things that our collaborative focus is a little bit less on around food insecurity and things like that, and that I think could be really of note to this group. And so these policy recommendations, we're ensuring they're in front of the legislature. There's a lot of great work happening across these indicators. And so we're really hoping this can be the school readiness session where we really made an impact and really moved our state in the right direction, so that when we do an update and we're looking back at this period, we see this as a turning point on a lot of these different data points. So how can you help? Collaboration is going to be key. If there's one thing I could ask, it's use it. Use it. We worked really hard and with so many of you to ensure that everything in there had a strong research basis, that we had high quality data that was vetted, and the data is there, the graphics are there, the additional resources are there, policy recommendations are all there. So we ask you to use it and share it. If there's people doing kind of goal setting in your community, the dashboard can be a place to start to really think about, what are the goals we're setting locally. If it's with your state legislator, share this resource. We're actually doing a webinar this week with legislative staff to kind of walk them through it. So we're really hoping that this is a well-used resource most of all. There's also a partners page you'll see. Many of your groups are already on there, and I appreciate that. If you don't see your group on there and you'd like to see it, email me and we'd love to add you. So we're looking for people to sign up as partners. And really what that is signing up for is really working and showing a commitment that school readiness was a priority. And really trying to show the legislature and other state leaders kind of the momentum we have in the big tent that we've gathered. And finally, join us in advocating for those policy recommendations and ensuring that the programs that strengthen school readiness in our state are available to the children who need them. And again, we can ensure that this is a school readiness session if we all work together, which I'm very excited about. So here's my contact information. Brittany will follow up with it, I'm certain. And yeah, like I said, let me know if you'd like to be on the partners page. If you're not, if you have any questions about the dashboard, I'm happy to talk about that now. But also if you look at it and wonder about anything in particular, please let me know. And yeah, I'll pause there for any questions or reactions or critiques that you all have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David. I love using the dashboard. I love the policy recommendations that you all have linked there. I think it is a really great tool, and I think perfect timing coming out, right before we dive into legislative session. So would really encourage everyone to go and take a look, click around. I think it's an amazing resource for the state of Texas. Any questions for David? Again, I will definitely send his follow-up, his email information, and I'll follow up. So if you need some time to kind of sit with it, but we have a little bit of time now if you have any burning questions for him.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay, we will switch gears once again, and I will hand it off to Megan Schneider from the Texas Education Agency. She is going to talk with us a little bit about an opportunity for the state of Texas, the Preschool Development Grant, and give us a bit of an update on what is happening in that area. And I think, Megan, you don't have any slides you want to share, correct? Okay, sounds good. Take it away.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. Happy 2023. The big update, if you haven't yet heard, is that Texas was awarded the Preschool Development Grant Birth to 5 renewal funding. So we are super excited, and also now turning our eyes to all the hard work that's ahead of us. Thank you to everyone on this call who took part in this series of stakeholder feedback sessions that we did throughout September during the application process. We are looking forward to digging in more to it and sharing more information. The next opportunity to learn more about it will be actually at Friday's Texas Early Learning Council meeting. So we just got a chance to send out kind of a summary of what was included in the grant, as well as the full grant application to all those Texas Early Learning Council members earlier today. And then we'll be talking with them. They'll be playing a role, particularly in the strategic planning process for that grant throughout 2023. So I will drop a link in the chat to that Friday. It's this Friday, January 20th from 11 to 1 is that next meeting. This is a link both to the agenda and the registration spot for that meeting. And just as a reminder for those who are tuning in a little later in the process and maybe didn't hear all of the stir in the fall when we were prepping that application, or perhaps weren't able to attend the last Texas Early Learning Council meeting where we shared some more information about what was going to be included in it. This PDG funding, or Preschool Development Grant, I'm trying not to use the acronym, funding is for states to do general early childhood systems building. So it's really flexible funding that states can decide how to use to best build out their systems to serve children and families. Texas is not alone in the fact that we have siloed agencies, overseeing different programs. And so the pieces that are included in this grant are all about kind of bolstering that system and include things like connecting families to services, supporting local early childhood care and education systems building, because we know that what happens at the state level gets repeated at all of the regional and local levels. So how can the state best, help support those local levels? Engaging families as leaders, strengthening and building the early childhood care and education workforce, expanding access to quality settings, as well as developing a statewide integrated data system. So we look forward to posting more information about it publicly in the coming days and weeks, and would be happy to answer any questions that you have right now. I'll also drop a link in the chat to the summary information that we shared in the, I think it was the October Texas Early Learning Council meeting, just to give, it's just a one slide overview, but it at least gives a flavor of what all the buckets of work that are included in that grant. And I see I have a couple of other, yeah, Kim, wahoo, in all caps, love it. There are Reagan and Sarah and maybe a handful of other interagency leaders are also on the line. So happy to answer any questions that you have right now. I will take stunned silence. That's also fine. Or maybe it's old news. You already heard that we got the grant.
No, we're just so excited. We just can't even process it yet. It's just too much. This is very exciting. It's a really great opportunity for Texas, and definitely encourage everybody, if you can, join the Texas Early Learning Council meeting on Friday to learn more. I think that would be a great opportunity to do that. And thank you, Megan, for putting the info in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other piece I'll mention is as we have more information, as there's a website available with more details, things like that, we'll definitely be including y'all's Prenatal to 3 collaborative. Y'all will be one of the emails that we'd be sending it out to. So if you came to this meeting, then I assume you are receiving those emails. And so you'll definitely, hear more as we have more details and updates to share.
Is there a timeline, Megan, for kind of next steps, like a website or something like that?
Should be soon. I would say within the next couple of weeks.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Megan? Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to.
Okay. Now we are going to talk a little bit about the 88th legislative session that, like I said, began on Tuesday, and it is already all systems go, I guess you could say. And so we will just give a little bit of space here for our lead PN-3 advocacy orgs to just give a little preview of what we have been working on and what you might see coming down the pipeline in the next few weeks during session from some of our organizations. And I will call on the lovely Kim first from Children at Risk to give us just a little bit of a preview of what y'all been working on.
Hello, everybody. So as you know, as Brittany just said, we are off and running. We currently have one bill that has been filed that we have a number for, that's SB 353, that is looking towards reimbursement rates and paying at your quality rate based no matter what your published rate is. So we are working on that piece. We have a bunch of other bills that are currently in the hopper and Ledge Council that we are all anxiously waiting. Mandy is actually not with us here today because she is at the Capitol talking to legislators and working on confirming our legislative champions and who's going to be leading those bills, talking to those that they've already said yes, and we are waiting on just the language to come back from Ledge Council. So stay tuned. This is the time that things move fast and then they move slow, and they move fast and then they move slow. So you will see updates. Make sure you follow all of us on our social media handles, because as bills get filed and numbered, we will make sure we are posting those and thanking our legislative champions for filing those. So keep abreast there. So reimbursement rates are a big one, one that we're working on. Eligibility to make pre-K partnerships more in line and hopefully easier to do. I say easier in quotes because partnerships are much more difficult than any of us really want to talk about. There's also some, we have the surplus that we are all been hearing about in the news. So we're also working on asking for more money. As you all know, the state doesn't put any additional dollars into our childcare systems currently. So how can we start changing that and having those conversations? There's more on workforce development. HB 619 report came out from TWC. I would encourage you, and I'll drop links in the chat. If you haven't read both of those reports, I would encourage you to read both of those. There is the report, the strategic plan from TWC themselves, and then there is the report that the work group worked on that with the help of the Prenatal to 3 Impact Center. So those are both reports that are important to read to truly understand where we're going. TWC's strategic plan is focused on what they're going to be able to do in their current budgets and current constraints. So both of them have good pieces of nuggets for all of us to use. So I'll drop a link in that as well. So we are currently working with legislators on how to build that and continue to build on that success and on that work. So that is it for now. The big thing is stay tuned because it's going to get ready to move fast and furious as those bills start to drop.
I like how you say that's it for now. No biggie. Just a couple things.
Yeah, just a few things we're working on.
Any questions for Kim? Madeline?
Yeah, hi, Kim. It's Madeline McClure. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Just 2 questions. Would you just flesh out a little more about SB 353 reimbursement rates for what? And then also, what are you asking money for and how much?
So I'll start with 353 because that's more concrete. The other one's still in work. So we are 353 is it's current practice with TWC that if you are in a childcare program that is in a low income area, you are only charging what parents can afford, right? That's kind of across the board. But if you are a TRS 4-star, your reimbursement rate may actually be higher than what you're charging publicly for families. And so it is practice that you can only get reimbursed at what your published rate is. So even though you're a TRS 4 and could be making these numbers up, $250 a week, but your published rate is only 180, you're only going to get 180 even though you're 4-star. So this bill would be allowing that your reimbursement rates based on your quality, not just based on what your public rate is. That makes sense? Good. Okay. Very good. And then as far as financial, so we are, and if you read the HB 619 report from the PN-3 and the work group, there's some things in there that lay out what that financial, what some possibilities are for financial asks. They include everything from stipends for early child educators to reimbursing at true cost of care. There's additional thoughts around how do we continue the stabilization grants with some bedrock or foundational funding to programs. So those are all things that we're exploring. We are looking at numbers, and so we are trying to figure out what those buckets are, and are starting to figure out what that ask is. So,
Thank you.
yep. And I'll drop those links in the chat.
Thanks, Kim. I'm saving the chat every time because there's a lot of great information in there. Any other questions for Kim? If not, then I will pass it off to Alec from Texans Care for Children.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you all are having a great day so far. I'll talk a little bit about our Healthy Beginnings portion of the legislative agenda for PN3. So as many people have probably heard throughout the past couple of months about this issue, one of our priorities is to expand postpartum coverage for moms enrolled in Medicaid to 12 months. Right now, that number is currently at 2 months, and we know that access to health insurance is key for addressing many challenges and complications that arise months after pregnancy. Last session, the legislature passed postpartum coverage extension to 6 months. However, that has yet to be implemented. But we know that there is a lot of momentum and focus on 12 months postpartum coverage right now, especially in the House. This has been made a priority by House Speaker Phelan, and a couple of bills have already been filed around this issue. I believe the main person who will be carrying the bill is Representative Rose, who carried the bill last session. So TBD on a bill number for that one. But that's a lot of where our maternal health is focused on this session. As far as children's health goes, David, who laid out the dashboard, hit some key numbers that we are also taking a look at. And we are focusing on kids who are eligible for Medicaid but are currently not enrolled. So as many people may know, the state of Texas has by far the highest children's uninsured rate in the nation, around 12.7% in 2019. Of those close to 1 million kids who were uninsured in 2019, there were over 400,000 who were eligible for Medicaid or CHIP but not enrolled. And where we are seeing is that families are running into bureaucratic barriers within our state's eligibility system that is blocking them from enrolling their children into health coverage. As David mentioned, some of those barriers include 211 wait times. We're hearing that people, are on hold for 30 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour, as well as not being able to do something as simple as change your password online with the Your Texas Benefits website. So we're advocating for the legislature to invest in our eligibility system and modernize capabilities and technology. A lot of that is within the budget that Brittany had mentioned that came out today. And the last part that we are prioritizing and focusing on is early childhood intervention, which is a program that, as many of you know, provides life-changing therapies and services to babies and toddlers with disabilities. This is a program that has been chronically underfunded by the state legislature over the past decade, along with severely underestimating the caseload growth that providers are seeing, which is something that we have heard constantly about over the past 2 years, is that providers are having to do more with less by serving more kids than that were originally counted for by the state. And the number, the per child funding that they're seeing is lower than what the legislature had allocated last session. So this is primarily a budget issue that we're focusing on. At first glance today from the budget that was released, it looks like there's positive news around ECI, but we will continue to advocate and appreciate all of y'all's support and everything on this issue and more.
Thank
So
you.
that was a quick run through. I just want to make sure
No,
everyone
that
else has
was
more
perfect.
time.
That was perfect. Any questions for Alec? Excited to hear about ECI funding, hopefully. Okay, and before I give a quick update, I wanted to make sure I mentioned for children at risk and Texans Care for Children, if you want to take a second to drop in the chat links to obviously your social, but also any advocacy alerts. I know as session ramps up a little bit with Text Protects, we'll have a specific landing page on our website where you can go and sign up for advocacy alerts. So, as things start to move really quickly, there might be some very specific asks that each organization has to reach out to your lawmaker on different policy issues. So if you want to get signed up for those specific advocacy alerts, we can take a second to drop that information in the chat. And I know that all of you are probably already signed up for the Prenatal to 3 collaborative monthly newsletters, because that's how you found out about this meeting. But we will also be sending out probably more high-level updates as a part of the PN-3 newsletter. But we will definitely be using that space to let you know kind of what is going on in this legislative session. But there we have all put in our advocacy alert information for each organization. If you want to take just a second to sign up for those advocacy alerts, I think that would be really helpful. As far as Text Protects goes, we cover the supported families bucket of policy work for the collaborative, and we are, as sure a shock to no one, are working on expanding access to prevention services, so more upstream prevention efforts this session. We will, of course, be supporting PEI, the Prevention and Early Intervention Divisions, budget ask to double investment in prevention services across the state. We are definitely focused on expanding access to voluntary home visitation services by increasing funding, working on a few different avenues to increase funding, and can hopefully share a little bit more on our strategy in the coming weeks as we get a little bit deeper into session. And we're also working on a bill that will be filed soon, focusing on preventing and mitigating the effects of adverse childhood experiences by really looking at the prevention services that are already available in the state of Texas, and ensuring that community and family voice is really included in making sure that those prevention services are helping families and are actually mitigating the effects of adverse childhood experiences. Any questions about supported families? And again, just want to make sure that Alec, if you had any questions on our Healthy Beginnings work as well, because I know that was a lot of information that we just threw out there. Okay, I'm going to give one more quick update before we hop off. There was a lot going on at the end of 2022, and I wanted to take just a quick second to make sure that the collaborative was aware of some pretty big policy wins for children and families in Texas and really nationwide. At the end of the year, a large omnibus legislative package passed through Congress and was signed by President Biden. And again, it contained a lot of wins and policies that affect children and families. And so I wanted to share a few highlights and just kind of things to know and watch for over the next couple of months. And wanted to say thank you to Adriana Kohler, the policy director for Texans Care, for helping to put together this really great federal summary. So as part of this really big package that passed at the end of the year, the first item that I wanted to flag for everyone was the Child Care and Development Block Grant. I know a lot of you are probably very familiar with that block grant. There was an increase of 1.9 billion with a B above fiscal year 2022. That's a 30% increase for a total funding of 8 billion. And for Texas specifically, for fiscal year 22, that adds up to be a little, almost actually 700 million. And for fiscal year 23, almost 9 million. So that is an increase of $209 million coming to Texas through the Child Care and Development Block Grant Program. For Head Start and Early Head Start, there was a $12 billion allotment. That's an increase of $960 million above fiscal year 22. And then for the preschool development grant that Megan was just talking about, $315 million was allocated, and that is an increase of 25 million above fiscal year 22. Also in this kind of policy area of early care and education, IDEA Part C, so this is the grant for infants and toddlers specific to the early childhood intervention program that Alec was just speaking about, that received $540 million, and that is an increase of 43.7 million above fiscal year 22. I know that a lot of you probably received quite a few emails about the McV program, begging you to please call on your lawmaker to get McV reauthorized. And that is the Maternal Infant Early Childhood Home Visiting Program. And that really, Texas receives the majority of their home visiting program funding from this McV federal program. That was reauthorized before the end of the year and included in this omnibus package, which is great news. This was a doubling of the federal investment in home visiting services, $800 million per year. Again, that is double the amount over a 5-year period. There is going to be a state match that's going to be required in some later years within that 5-year period. But within this provision of the bill, there was a $124 million increase in tribal funding over 5 years, which will work to double the tribal set aside for American Indian and Alaskan Native families. And there was also a provision included so that virtual home visitation can continue if needed, which is really great to allow flexibility for home visitors. Then I also wanted to flag, as this bill was huge, as you can see, there's like so many good things in here. The Pregnant Workers Fairness Act was also included in this. This was a last minute addition to the bill, but this provision requires employers to provide reasonable accommodations for pregnant workers to protect the health of their pregnancy. Kind of along this same vein in the health policy world, there is a provision that states must provide 12 months of continuous coverage for children in Medicaid starting in January of 2024. This is a huge win for PN-3. This has been a PN-3 priority for the last several years. Texas passed a bill last session to have just one mid-year eligibility check at the 6-month mark for children enrolled in Medicaid CHIP. But the goal really has always been to ensure that kids have insurance for a full year and they're not unnecessarily being kicked off of their health insurance. But that is a really big win. There was also a provision included that is an option for states to extend Medicaid coverage for 12 months postpartum. This was made permanent. Previously, the state option was set to expire in 2025, but it is now a permanent option for states. And this does not require states to extend Medicaid postpartum coverage. Rather, it just continues to give states that option, which will be very important, obviously, as we've all been working very hard to ensure that postpartum coverage is extended for new moms. So that is a really big highlight as well. The final thing that I'll mention that I think is just really something for us to keep an eye on, Alec mentioned kind of the fallout I think that we can expect from this. And again, just something that we need to keep a pulse on. There is a new provision in the law that delinks the Medicaid continuous coverage requirement from the public health emergency that has been ongoing, as we know, for the past 2.5-ish years. This continuous coverage protection ends as of March 31st, 2023. So that is rapidly approaching. This is a really big deal. This is going to mean that we can anticipate that children and mothers enrolled in Medicaid in Texas are probably going to be receiving notices in the mail come this April, May, that they will have to verify their eligibility for Medicaid before being renewed, or there is a chance that that coverage is going to be cut off. The vast majority of pregnant women who had Medicaid during the pandemic will likely no longer be eligible because Medicaid, as we know right now, cuts off 60 days after childbirth. So this is definitely something that we want to keep our eye on. As Alex mentioned, there's been some concerns with really long wait times to change your password, ensure that you're able to log into your account. And so I think as we see the ending of this public health emergency, this is going to be a big deal. And Alex, feel free to chime in if there's anything else specific that you want to share on that, but wanted to make sure that we highlighted that. That was a ton of information. Again, thank you to Adriana. I will try my best to put this into like a little one-page, not even one page, half a page summary that we can send out with our email recap from our time together today. But I wanted to make sure that before we hop off, that I give everybody a chance to ask any other final questions, or if there is anything that you want to share with the full collaborative that you've been working on, this would be the time to do so. Friendly reminder, we will be meeting again next quarter, probably in May, where we will just talk about all of the really great things that we were able to pass in the legislative session. I'm sure it will be a great celebration. So looking forward to that. And just please remember, if you want to stay updated on all things legislative session, to go and sign up for advocacy alerts with all the links that we put in the chat there. I have saved the chat so that we make sure that we have all that information. And that is all that I have. Does anybody else have anything before I give you some time back this afternoon?
Brittany, there's a question in the chat from
Oh,
Kimberly about the relief funding that centers are currently receiving. Currently, there isn't any federal additional dollars coming down to continue that. That is one of the things that we are continuing to explore to see if that is something the state could potentially do with our surplus. As we know that that cliff is coming. So again, I don't see any movement on that continuing at the federal level, but there is some chatter about that continuing at the state level. So we will keep you posted as all that process gets underway.
Great question, and thank you so much, Kim, for answering. Appreciate that. Okay, then that is all that we have for you. Again, thank you all so much for joining and spending part of your day with us. We really appreciate it, and just thank you for all of your support for the PN3 Collaborative, and we will see you all soon. Bye,
All right,
everyone.
bye-bye. Enjoy the rest of your day,
Bye.
everyone.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.